After having run this YouTube channel for quite a while now and having done a few different things with it, we've finally hit 40,000 subscribers.
And since we do a lot of videos and stuff on that Warhammer 40,000 thing, we thought we'd make something special to commemorate this particular milestone.
And what are we going to do? Well, it might surprise you to know that despite having talked about it in so many videos, we've never actually played a proper game of Warhammer 40,000 2nd edition. So let's change that in the name of #content. Second edition 40k came out in 1993, replacing Rogue Trader and making the game into something more recognisable as 40k to modern players, especially now when many little elements from it that were excised in 3rd edition were put back in 8th. But it does still have a lot of quirkiness, so we thought this would be a nice balance of the familiar and unfamiliar compared to the other old editions of the game.
We're not going in entirely blind. Although the edition had been and gone before we ever got into 40k, we've read the rulebooks and codices before, as evidenced by all those videos we've done on it. But there is a world of difference between reading a rulebook and actually playing a game using it. The books say that the smallest force you can have a real battle with is about 500 points, so that's what we're going to make. For now at least. Maybe we'll expand on this later. Who knows? And yeah, we could easily use the existing armies we have, since the basic loadout of many units hasn't really changed much. But we will be making new forces specifically for this because, you know, 40k sub celebration, you gotta make it special. Although, given how expensive everything was points-wise in 2nd edition, they'll be pretty small armies in all honesty. Also, as much as we'd love to, we won't be making them exclusively from 2nd edition models, because we'd be at the mercy of eBay listings having what we need, and that stuff can be very expensive. Just be aware that if we could have them all be authentic 2nd edition models, then we absolutely would have. Anyway, this first video will be us picking our armies and putting them together, with the next video being where we actually play the game. So, let's pick us some armies.
2nd Ed forces weren't constructed like a modern army. It varied a little depending on what codex you were using, but to use regular Space Marines, Ultramarines, as an example, up to 50% of their points could be characters, the equivalents of HQ choices. A minimum of 25% must be chosen from squads, which can broadly be thought of as your troops choice equivalent, although most regular infantry fits into the role. And up to 50% can be support, which is usually like allies and tanks. Certain units needed other things to be taken in order to use them, like you needed a tech marine in order to take a dreadnought, but given the small size of the forces we'll be using, the only restriction we'll probably need to keep in mind is that we need one character to be our army commander, with the rest being made up of squads. So since we have a few codexes to pick from, which ones are we going to be using for our forces?
I tend to favour low model count, high points cost armies, and I've really always wanted an excuse to collect a Chaos force, so Chaos Terminators were the obvious choice. And, you know, as a benefit, it means I won't have to paint many models. By picking this, I didn't really have a huge amount of choice in what I picked, since there's not that many points to play with once you've got the minimal requirements. My squad selection will be a 4-man Terminator squad, tricked out with 2 Power Fists, a Power Mace, a Combi Melter, and a Combi Flamer. My army commander will be a Lord in Terminator armor, armed with a single Lightning Claw and a Combi Melter. The rest of my points will be taken up by giving them all a Mark of Chaos, the Mark of Khorne specifically, since, I mean, what other Chaos god would I choose? These marks cost a total of 110 points in total, 20 points per regular Terminator and 30 points for the Lord. Which is a lot for such a small force, but what it does mean is that a 2nd edition Terminator's 3+ on 2d6 armor save becomes 2+ on 2d6. Granted, 2nd edition's armor penetration rules mean it gets reduced by most weapons, but still, it's a bit good. All of this will come to a grand total of 496 points.
I know Snipe went with the Space Marine army, so I should probably pick something different to add variety, but I'll be taking my army from Codex Ultramarines for reasons that you'll see in a moment. Firstly, I'll take a tactical squad, and a base one is 300 points. It'll be a 10-man squad, but I'll have the option to combat squad it into 2 5-man squads if I like. The squad will have a missile launcher and flamer combo, since that's the classic loadout they'd have if they were 2nd edition monopose marines, but the sergeant will have a power sword because I might as well. My army commander will be a captain, because I don't actually have much of a choice in that. He'll have a power fist and melter gun, since that's a ridiculous combo, as well as a couple of items from the Dark Millennium War Gear cards, as I had some points to play with. More specifically, he'll have a bionic eye and a displacer field. I'll go into what they do later, since the latter especially is pretty fun. This will all come to 499 points, just squeaking under the 500 point limit. Guess we've actually got to make these things now.
Since my army consists of just 5 Terminators, I ended up getting a single Chaos Terminator box, meaning that my Lord is a little less extravagant than the standalone model, but it does make it a lot cheaper to put this force together. I decided not to put the shoulder spikes on the regular Terminator squad members, since I honestly find them a little messy looking, and it allows me to just use them on the Lord so she stands out a bit more. Speaking of the Lord, the Wolf Skull helmet comes from Zinj Industries, and she's sporting a Deathwatch pad because I thought it might be fun to have her as an ex-Deathwatch member who still wears the pad mockingly, and definitely not because I made a mistake while putting them together and ended up with one shoulder pad down, and this was the only Terminator size one that we had spare. Based on the fact that they're Cornet, I went for a red paint scheme but chose silver instead of bronze for the details, as I'd already painted a lot of bronze on my Space Wolves and wanted a bit of a change. Yes, I am aware that by making this decision, I have cursed myself to have to forever explain that they're not actually intended to be word bearers despite looking exactly like them. Speaking of corn, I will admit that painting the little corn symbols on them was pretty nerve-wracking, but I think it was made significantly worse because I realised only after doing the first one that I'd actually had 2 fully caffeinated lattes right before doing it, and that was probably a mistake. So yeah, that's my teeny tiny force.
Since they're just Marines, making my force was pretty simple. I just grabbed a tactical squad box and everything else came from spare parts we had lying around. And yeah, this is why I wanted to go Marines, because when I think of 2nd edition, 2nd Company Ultramarines with red gun casings and goblin green bases are just what I think of. So that's exactly what I did. The blue is the darker modern blue Ultras use rather than the slightly lighter older version, but don't let that worry you too much. I also did something I usually don't and actually used water slide transfers for the first time in years. Literally, I think I only got decent at doing free-handed iconography on models because I hate using water slide transfers so much. But with the aid of Microsol and Microset, I was able to apply these as painlessly as possible. Dare I say it, that this experience has somewhat lessened my hatred of them? Slightly? The tactical squad itself is pretty much what you'd expect out the box, aside from a handful of pieces mostly taken from the Mark IV Marine kit, most notably the special weapons, since I thought they'd give them a bit of an older vibe since those designs are mostly based on the Rogue Trader originals. Also, since I may or may not want to combat squad these guys, I magnetised this chap's backpack so I can swap it out for one with a banner, as when you do combat squad, one Marine who isn't in the squad with the Sergeant gets designated as a veteran, and the Codex suggests one way to mark them as such is to give them their own banner. Then there's the Captain, who again is made from a bunch of Tactical Squad and Mark IV parts, as well as a couple of Ultramarine specific parts that I'd never previously found a use for, but have now because, well, Ultramarines. But there we are, exactly the type of hipster army that I assume many of you would expect me to make. Will it be any good? I have no idea. Only one way to find out.
So join us next time where we'll pit our armies against each other in the retro crucible that is our coffee table.
See you soon.